Welcome to an exploration of the power of a graceful leader tenets with Truett Tate. Truett and I are here to explore each tenet in a conversational, reflective, and relatable way. Truett is a global leader, an influencer, and a coach. I am the author of A Power of a Graceful Leader, Alexis Thompson. We would love for you to join us in this fun and easily digestible journey into infusing our lives and work with grace. Okay, here we are, Truett and Lexy, back together again after some weeks of global traveling for both of us a little bit. And we're really excited to dig into tenet number 5. And this tenet talks about the co-creation of all of things with a lens on innovation. And when we talk about leadership and change and technology, right? You and I are both a part of a generation that has seen from a telephone cord and being wound up at where you're standing to being wherever you want to be on the globe now, and that phone can still find you for better or for worse. So
Right.
this is that yummy place where brainstorming and creation come together to solve old problems, tackle new problems as a result that have shown up because of that new technology and unintended consequences of co-creation. So here's your first question, Truett.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. How do you personally enlist co-creating new ways or approaching old problems? Any examples, tips? Go wherever you want with this.
Okay, alrighty. Okay, take a moment to reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what I try to do and what I think is really important, and it probably has always been. You know, we have a temptation to say nowadays that this is so different. I think the idea of being innovative, being creative, trying to think of different ways to solve problems, I think it was as important 100 years ago as it is today. And
Yes.
I'm quite serious about making sure we don't pride ourselves and everything's new and everything's different. And, you know, the fact is, the idea of making sure that any organization, and we can reduce it to two people who are trying to move any idea forward, making sure that we aren't locked into the same old thinking and the same old approach, which, as you know, the adages go, will give you the same result, is critical. How do you end up doing that? I think, you know, for me, I'm always a bit of a blend between how to use structure, how to use discipline, and I think that there's enough chaos in the world. It's up to us to put order to it, and in that sense, and I think what you need to do is build into any organization a process by which you make sure that you open up any idea and any question to challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You make sure that anything and everything you do says to folks that you are open to challenge and open to new ideas. You need to reward it. You need to communicate that that's the environment of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently deliver it. So when you get a good idea, put it on the board and
Mm-hmm.
say what else, and encourage that we're not satisfied with a good idea. You go around the table, you make sure you get everybody's voice in it. That's an important part of the creative process, is that people don't feel that any given players at the table always have the good answers. And as a
Yeah.
leader, you make sure that that isn't the way you behave. You make sure that you try to read faces and read body language, and you try to draw the most out of everybody in the room. So you want process with things like
Mm-hmm.
when things go wrong,
Yeah.
you have it established that you will review it and will try to come up with lessons learned. Um, it's really important that that be something that you state you're always going to do,
Mm-hmm.
so that doing it isn't criticism of an individual or of a
Right.
situation, right? If you let it be haphazard, you run the risk that someone feels attacked because now you're no, no. When things go wrong, things go wrong. And the mentality has to be it's an opportunity, and it's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity we're going to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
And we so much believe this that we will do a lesson learned analysis every time something goes wrong.
Yep.
Um, and it's funny, you'll, um, as we talk about different reactions, each of us is wired a certain way and some things come naturally.
Yep.
So, for instance, for me, being positive and giving reinforcement, I do quite easily.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's not where I'm going to focus putting my discipline. I put my discipline on the things that don't come natural. And everyone should think that way. What do I understand is a good practice and doesn't come naturally to me? And if I can identify that, then I can put in place a routine, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be a particular time every week, whether it be a particular time every day, whether it be a part of everybody knows this just blew up. We just lost this opportunity. We will, within 48 hours, have our lessons learned. Um, so think about how to mix everything isn't scheduled and everything isn't disciplined. There's got to be a balance, but
Mm-hmm.
but go ahead and put that discipline around things that don't come naturally to you. And in this particular context, create opportunities, get everybody's voice, and show your openness to challenge and your request for creativity.
Okay, I love all of that. It's so good. And so often when I'm working with a executive leader, they have their own sacred cows, let's say, or their own passions and pet projects and when they're challenged sometimes just by nature of being a human being, you can be brustled or a little defensive as your first reaction, right? Do you have any tips for people when that your first reaction is like, oh God, for whatever reason. And then you just need to settle down and settle into the exchange because there may be something that you hadn't seen or an unintended consequence that you didn't understand as the leader, not being close enough to the work sometimes, right? You've got
Mm.
two or three people between you. Um, to
Lexi,
what,
Lexi, I love this
yeah.
because you are being you. At the end of the day, you're going to try to turn that into a question. Meanwhile, what you've done is shared with me. You're, I mean, our interviews always go both ways. They're more conversation than they're interview. If you dare try to make that a question, I'll recoil because you made a wonderful observation and a good suggestion of how people should be aware and think.
Okay, all right. Well, I was wondering if you had a personal tip, like for example, when I know that's happening in me, uh,
Yes.
I could feel like I have a body response. Usually get a little warm. I might lean in like, how dare you? There's a thing that's going on
Hmm.
that I'm trying to protect. But I also have the consciousness to say, okay, if you're doing that, there's something to look at here, right?
Hmm.
Do you have any cues that tell you, okay, Truett, this is something you need to take some time with?
Interesting. I learn things from you all the time. I'm in the course of the conversation. I'll try to be running on a different track because
Sure.
nothing jumps to mind,
Okay.
and certainly not anything that, in a way, you and I haven't haven't talked about. And by that,
Okay.
I would probably be getting back to making sure that I'm asking questions, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Um, if I catch myself telling somebody,
That's
then
a good one.
I'm aware and
Yeah.
I'll catch myself up. This
Yep.
is, the if you're serious about trying to invite creativity,
hmm
you sure ain't going to get it unless you're listening.
Yes. Yes.
All you're
Good.
doing is letting yourself talk and hope you recognize your genius, and that's no good. Um, so,
It's so true, you know? It's so true. Okay. I love it. I think that that key to if you find yourself telling someone is a really good cue because some of us are doing that and we're not even paying attention we're doing it
mhm.
until someone brave enough lets us know in one way or
Yeah,
another.
right.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, in the same line of this tenant, another question that I was curious about is when you look around yourself, like if you think about all the people you're surrounded with and the many very worthy pieces of work that you're doing in the
Okay.
world, um, what does your talent look like? And I don't mean just from a visual perspective,
All
right?
handsome, all beautiful.
Oh, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. That's
No,
funny.
no, no. Rainbow of colors. No, no, no.
Yep.
I know you don't mean that. You mean
Right.
what's the profile?
Yeah. Like when you,
Characteristics? Um, Interesting. There's a visceral reaction when you ask it that I want to say, well, bright, positive, creative. Um, and it's funny in a conversation like this, we're analyzing our own thoughts just a tiny bit. Think, analyze, verbalize, catch
yep.
yourself. Um, you got to have a balance. And I
Yeah.
do believe that, right? Yeah, instinctively, would I like a bias towards open communicators who are, positive and creative? I would like that to be a bias. A bias. However, I am a big believer that if you hire a set of people who are cookie cutters of your
Oops, Truett, your sound just went out. There you are. No, your sound just went out for a minute. You're back. Sorry. So where we lost you was
okay,
you the cookie cutter statement, which I
yeah,
really
you
want to
don't want
hear.
so yeah. I think I I am really aggressive about
Right.
trying to speak to people who I think are bright and have high integrity and can be open and honest. That maybe is the common denominator that I want from them
Nice.
all. But they should be, there should be a skeptic, and there should be someone who's incredibly analytical versus someone else on the team who is highly intuitive.
Hmm.
Um, and and in particular, um, a leader should be very conscious of hiring people that bring strengths to the team that they don't bring. And you've got a problem if any leader says, "Well, I got it all,"
Yeah.
because I don't think any of us do,
No.
and I certainly don't. And I treasure people who think a bit differently than I do, who
Mhm.
are willing to challenge me to say I'm wrong, um, and that's any leader really needs that because
Mhm.
it's easy, particularly as you get successful and as your
Mhm.
success becomes grander, you believe the hype. And I
Yeah.
tell you, one of the best relationships I had in that regard was when I was on Richard Branson's board. And when I joined the board, he actually had a sit down with me and said one of the reasons he wanted me on the board is because I had been his banker. I often said no. I often
No.
said that's not a good idea. And to show you, truly self awareness, he shared with me that his biggest problem is that he's often surrounded by sycophants. And he says, I think we should do this. And they all go, oh, that's a great idea. And oh, that could be. And he kind of thinks, oh my God, I am a marketing guy. I am full of ideas. And I'm sure that many of them are no good. And I'm not hung up. And you saw this in him because, you'd sit there and say, that's a horrible reason. That's a horrible idea because X, Y, and Z. And he'd look at it and they go, okay, how about, well, he's
Yep.
gone.
Pivot.
We left it, right?
Yep.
What you said made sense as a challenge, and it goes, you might have a little bit of debate, but he wasn't anchored in the idea. He's an idea
Nice.
man, right?
Mhm.
And that's great self awareness. probably the more you are a marketer and an idea person, the
Mm-hmm.
more you need respectful people who will go, I don't know if that's a good idea. And that's all a part of this idea of great teams or composites,
Yeah.
multiple talents and skills. And when you're looking at investing in a company, I want to see a leadership team that has diversity. We talk about it in terms of DEI. That's almost the cosmetic side of it, but it's also kind of a metaphor for the fact that you want people that have different backgrounds and see the world differently and have solved
Mm-hmm.
problems differently. And sometimes that comes as a function of gender and ethnicity and nationality and certainly economic backgrounds, et cetera. And
Yes.
so, you do, and I am a big believer that, DEI, a lot of it is to make sure a boardroom and a management team is not seeing the world through a tiny, narrow, singular experience, singular goal.
Yeah. Wow. There was a lot of good stuff there. No,
And
seriously.
I'm sure there was some garbage too, but that's okay.
Nope, there was a lot of good stuff there. In fact, a lot of times that's why executive coaching actually exists in a lot of ways. Because when I'm working with a senior exec, well, any leader, emerging or otherwise, it's a checkpoint. It's like, here's how awesome I am. And then I'll just hold the pause and I'll be, yes, and let's have this other side of the conversation. And it's such a lovely place to be with another human being in that safe
Mhm.
transparency, right? And everybody needs a place like that. And it is true, the higher you go up, the less oxygen there is. It's just the way it is. So you
You
need
said
places
it.
like that. So one of the things I've noticed, and I wonder if you have, when we get emerging leaders. So it's that person that was a star in their whatever thing they're a star in, right? So it was an I game, and we talked about I and we a little bit in another
Yeah.
tenet.
Yeah.
But it can be really hard for ego, right? You and I have worked through a lot of the egoic stuff, and continue to. But it can be really hard for ego to just allow yourself to, like you're saying, Richard did, put something out there, let it come back however it is, and not attach to it. Just be like, oh, okay, that means it needs refinement, or it's garbage and I need to pivot somewhere else, and not identify yourself, right, with that idea.
Yep.
And that
No,
can be
no.
really hard. It's
And I
really
and I truly found that he was one of the best people about that. Not
Yeah.
something I necessarily um, attribute to myself. Maybe because I'm not as creative and I don't spew out as many good ideas, but I
Mm-hmm.
do think it's probably in terms of wiring. I tend to think if my idea, it's a good idea, and you have to
Yeah.
catch yourself. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the
I get
best
it.
way to catch yourself, yeah, it'd be wonderful if you could catch yourself all the time. But the better part is that you've got some people you can rely on that you like and trust. You're not
Yeah.
offended. You take the challenge,
Yeah.
and that's part of why you want this composite of profiles.
Yeah. So you said, you used a really, I love the word and the intensity it came with, because you said, I'm really quite aggressive about this. And that to me means a form of intentionality, like you're paying attention,
Exactly the word. You say
right?
aggressive, and I would
Yeah.
go for intentionality, which
Yeah.
is
So
important actually because aggressive could be belligerent. It could, no,
sure.
it's talking about intentionality, which I think if there's anybody who's an advocate of change, intentionality has to be part of the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that gets into, we could go ahead on all sorts of tangents.
Yeah.
Intentionality with the team also comes with the communication skills to describe the end goal. Right,
Yes.
and that is it's a gift and it's a skill, but it's also a necessity to describe it and describe it in a way that it becomes real and meaningful to those that listen to it. And
Mm-hmm.
then we've talked about these things before. Then consistently apply, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be repetitive, but be consistent in the way you apply, how you reward it, how you express it, how you
Mm-hmm.
search for people that are aligned. You get a lot of the keywords in your books and in your uh, teachings. The idea of alignment and integration
Mm-hmm.
all come along with this. You can't get aligned and you can't be integrated if you don't all agree what it is you're aspiring to be or achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this whole idea of pulling a team together in that sense is a function of a vision well articulated,
Yeah.
giving people a sense of what is your goal and why are you going after it. And
Yeah.
then you can start getting that creativity in the how.
Yeah, and more now than ever with the new generations coming into the workforce, that's the first question is like I'm becoming me. I'm becoming clear on who I am and what I'm here to do much faster than you and I probably were able to do.
Yeah.
And they want to know, how do I plug into your vision, and do I care? You
Right.
know? And so
And why
it's
should I?
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really more, probably more important than it ever has been, because the command and control is just crumbling, and there's an enlisting that's going on, and a partnering and a co-creating, and it's so awesome to be a part of this. It's a great time to be alive, I think.
I
It's
I agree.
fascinating.
Perfectly
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. Okay, one more here. What piece of advice, okay, can you offer us regarding how to discern when to lead and when to follow?
Yeah, it's funny. Now you get an immediate recoil because I think I'm kind of lousy at discerning. My
Okay.
wife, my wife is terrific,
Okay.
and discernment is, and of course you and I know I've got I do care about that from a kind of religious perspective, and I think there are
Sure.
people who have the gift of discernment, and I
Sure.
tend to hear that word and lean towards that side, make it a bigger challenge than it is. So I'm going to try to strip that away for a second.
Okay.
How do I pick up on?
Yep.
Uh, well, I'm not sure that I'm particularly good at it.
Okay.
Therefore, as I kind of suggested before, when there are things that I'm not good at, then I bring in more structure and more discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is, as a generality or as a generalization, um, almost with everybody, my goal is to make them leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and therefore, I think I've said to you before, my favorite approach to Q&A or in a little session where I'm working with somebody, I like Socratic learning,
Mm-hmm.
which ends up being, I say one thing, which is typically a question, and they're going to go for 5 minutes because I'm trying to get them to find the answer that I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
they have in them, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
drawing it out. If that's the
Yep.
case, they're going to do 80% of the talking. But I'm doing that very intentionally because
Yep.
I want them to be able to get there on their own faster. And if they
Mm-hmm.
do, they don't need me, right? They
Yep.
quickly, what you're doing, if I wanted to be selfish, I'm getting them to come into my office less. Gives
Yes.
me more time perhaps to reflect. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, it's allowing them to have more confidence to act on their own
Mm-hmm.
and to lead and to be confident in their leading because they've worked through the process, their
Yes.
conclusion, and they're not trying to figure out what my answer is to make me happy. Because that,
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling them, you got the answer, work through it, let me hear your thought process. Once you've got that, you don't need me. So rather than pick times to lead versus pick times to follow, my approach is broadly to say, I want to build a lot of leaders. I like the idea. And this was Walter Wriston to me. So a name drop. I'm lucky enough as a young buck to have worked with Walter Wriston. And he told me once that his favorite question to ask someone in an interview, if it's for a leader position, is to say, tell me all the people who have worked with you who no longer work with you and have gone on to do great things.
Love
He
it.
said, I am looking for a developer and exporter of talent. There are tons of people who run a division and are very good, and how they do it, they
Mm-hmm.
cling to power, they cling to good people, they
Mm-hmm.
build a great organization, and they don't export it. In
Yeah,
my company, was his view, I want people that export talent. You're a developer of people, a developer of leader, and I've always aspired to that.
that's a great aspiration. Yeah, that is. I would say that fact that he shared that with you and that you were smart enough at a young age to say this means something and do
Mm.
something with it's pretty
As a
awesome.
sponge.
What a gift. Yeah, that's great though. A lot
Take
of
it in.
people would have ignored it, you know? So
Mm.
that's cool. Okay. So, have you ever been in a position where you found yourself following a team that you've created, right? That there's leaders that are leading now and they're accountable and all the things you hope for, but they're going with all the confidence they have the wrong way, air quotes,
That's
right?
interesting.
And you need to intercede. You feel whether it's true or not, your inclination is to pivot them, redirect them, put the bumpers on the bowling alley, whatever that is.
Mm.
And how to do, because sometimes that is part of
Yeah.
leading.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting. And actually, it would probably, I probably do have an example, a couple of examples that are recent enough that I think they're appropriate.
Okay.
Um, I've mentioned, and don't mind dropping their names that people wouldn't per se know, but maybe they'll smile when they listen to this podcast. People like Andrew Gakesy or Sarah Riley are both people who I met early on in their careers. They reported to me, or at least were junior to me in on a board or in an organization. And in both of their cases, I said, these are great people. These people have enormous talent, and I could work for these people. And I used to kind of enjoy that as a just a casual phrase, but then I would
Mm-hmm.
get someone's smile and I said, I'm not being nice. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I really do see that I could work
Mm-hmm.
for them and I would respect them. And I hope they will step beyond where I've stepped and I'd be glad. And in both cases, on those two names, I ended up working for them. Right.
Awesome.
And in this, now, all of that was to get to your question. I do listen. I do try
Yeah,
to
I know.
pay attention.
You're doing great.
Um, in both cases, I think they would say that now the role I play is to be, and it sounds arrogant, but it's their words. And you do get at what we're trying. They say, you are my wisdom.
Yes. Yes.
So when the situation happens that you
Mm-hmm.
describe, I can go to them
Mm-hmm.
and I can talk to them about it and share my view. And it's not instruction and it's not regaining leadership,
Mm-hmm.
but the relationship has grown so that they can take that in and regard
Mm-hmm.
it as wisdom.
Yeah.
Speaking that wisdom thing is some combination of experience and caring.
Mm.
So the other word can be smart, intelligent. Thanks, you've given wisdom. I think intimates, and it does to me, some sort of affection.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, and
Yeah.
so
And I think
that
a
would be.
part of wisdom is all of those things and how it like transfers, right? Because I can have wisdom and there's two people that want it or connect to it. And that's the thing is like, I think there's a connection to the energy exchange that happens when you're exchanging wisdom with people. Um, that makes it wisdom versus
Mm.
telling, showing, demonstrating a whole bunch of other ways to be with somebody. And I do think, someone who's acquiring a fair amount of gray hair, I think time
Yours
served
is
counts.
premature.
Yeah, there you go. But I do think time served counts, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We've been around the block, different blocks doing different things. but in the blocks that we've been around, we've learned. And if we can distill that in a way that we can share gracefully, right,
Yeah,
with people
beautiful.
that learning, that is the wisdom transfer. So that's pretty lovely. And I think that's the perfect note to end this tenant on with you. And
Good.
I really enjoyed this, Truett. You landed all the questions really well. And I really appreciate I think you demonstrated some discernment here, quite frankly.
Oh,
And
it must have been by accident.
maybe you channeled your wife, who knows?
I'm slowly but surely learning.
Okay. So we'll meet one more time and we'll dive into compassionately powerful.
I look forward to it. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Lexi. You have a great
You're
rest of
welcome.
your day. Bye bye.
Thanks.